Hello and welcome to Simplify TV, the web series and podcast for agencies, marketers, media buyers, and business owners. I'm David McBee. Our guest today is Scott Cody, Executive Director at 3131 Media Solutions. For over a decade, Scott has been helping businesses navigate through the ever-changing landscape of media consumption. In his words, advertising is simple. Identify your ideal customer, find your ideal customer, and engage with your ideal customer. Scott, welcome to Simplify TV.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here. We were talking. You and I go back a ways, and I've stolen some of the things that you've taught people. So when you asked us to come on here, I was honored.
I appreciate that you steal my stuff from a training because that means I'm doing my job, and hopefully
Exactly.
it helped you make some deals.
Yeah. No, it did, without a doubt.
All right, so we're going to actually start this interview with a question way out of left field. If that's all right with you, I'm going to ask, what was it like being a part of the Kardashian entourage?
Yeah, not a lot of people can say that, right? So in a former life, I was a sports reporter here in New Orleans, and I've got a great bucket list. And one of the things I got to check off was I covered the Super Bowl when the Saints won the Super Bowl, and so that was a huge deal, especially down here. Well, at the Super Bowl, as a reporter, they kind of shuttle you around and keep you kind of in certain places. Well, as the game's getting down to the end of it, it looks like that Peyton Manning is going to go down and tie the game, and so they start shuttling all of the local reporters down kind of through the bowels of the stadium there in Miami, and then they just stop us, and so we can see through the tunnel the stadium, and we can hear the crowd cheering, and we know, crap, we're about to miss history here. This is about to be the first Super Bowl that goes to overtime, and so we're sitting there all just kind of like sheep. We've got these bright orange vests that they make us wear, and we're just sitting behind this rope, and we're all starting to get pretty angry. Well, about that time, here comes this probably 10 to 15 people, and I recognize Kim Kardashian, and I recognize her sister, and they've got their little entourage with them, and some of the folks that are with them have suits very similar to what I've got on. And the reason she was there, she was dating Reggie Bush, who was a member of the New Orleans Saints at the time. So they're getting ushered onto the field, and I just went for it. So I took off that red vest, lifted up the rope, kind of acted like I belonged, and sure enough, got past security, got onto the field. The other guys did get on in time to see Tracy Porter's interception, but I like to have that story that I snuck into the Super Bowl with the Kardashians.
That is a great story. That shows a tenacity for success. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, so back to business. You have been
Sure, I
working
got
at.
plenty more of stories like that. We could just fill the time with those.
We could. It'd probably be my most popular episode, but because I'm supposed to ask about advertising, I'm going to do that
I got
now.
you. Yeah.
All right. So, what do you feel is, let's say, what is the most important thing that a brand can do to ensure that they run a successful advertising campaign?
Yeah, look, one of my favorite things is Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. So, in other words, you have to define success up front. Before we get started with any planning, before we get started with any execution, we need to get out of our clients what will it take for you to count this campaign, to count this strategy as a win? What is your KPI? And so we're all about accountability on our end and their end. So I mean, we love spreadsheets. At least I do. I don't know if my team necessarily does, but that's how we do it. We're constantly measuring what it is that we're doing so that we don't just get to the end of the campaign after 6 months and we say, well, hey man, we have all these impressions. We have all this data that looks fantastic. And they tell us, well, we didn't sell anything. So they have to really define what success is. And because everyone says, hey, I need more customers and I need to make more money. Well, how? How are we doing that? So we truly and intentionally dig in, get that question, and we don't start and we don't work with anyone that can't give us that. So I think that's the most important thing, is define what success is going to look like.
I absolutely agree with that 100%. And it usually does come down to sales or customers, right? But I've also found that it's like the number of customers that they expect for their $1,000 investment sometimes is like unheard of. Like Okay, I got you 10 new customers that all spent 1,000 a piece and you're still not happy? Do you find that to be an issue too?
So, there's always these little one-offs that come up, but when we work really hard to find out, we work a lot with credit unions. And so we try to find out what is the value of a member? What is the value of a credit card customer? What is the value of an auto loan? The true value of it. And so they have to do some work. So when that question comes up, we can say, we can define their ROI pretty significantly. Hey, you dropped $5,000 on this. We brought you 10 people that you increased your auto loan or your credit card portfolio by 50%. You told me that means that's X amount of money. So this made you so much compared to what you just spent. We usually try to avoid that kind of what happened conversation by really getting into the numbers.
Yeah. And that's a little harder with traditional media, right? You do some traditional media, so I'm imagining that programmatic plays a role in that somehow.
It plays a huge role. And there's a saying out there that says, politics is downstream from culture, right? Well, I think that there's something similar with advertising. I think advertising and marketing is downstream from consumption. And so we don't talk really in platforms. So what programmatic allows us to do is really be agnostic when we put together campaigns, because we want eyeballs, right? We want to know that, we want to identify, like you said earlier, we want to identify who you want to reach, and then we want to know where they are. And I always use this example. I don't care if I've identified someone that wants your product and they're on catfancy.com or cnn.com. They're the same value, right? And it was pointed out to me that there is no catfancy.com, so I had to stop using that analogy. But the idea, I think, is the same. And so programmatic allows us to truly throw out, and this is what I always stole from you. Adults 25 to 54 is not your demographic. Really screaming that. That's what we try to tell them. We're not going to box in who we think we want to reach for. How about we look at them? They're literally raising their hand for your product. Programmatic allows us to tie all of that in together. But to your point about leveraging traditional media with kind of attribution, if we can set the bar with them at a measurable level with the result that they see, it all ties into it. Instead of being this linear kind of attribution, it truly is a circular. So everything works in conjunction with everything. That's how we try to approach it.
Let's talk about CTV. Are you selling much CTV to your clients?
I don't think we have a campaign that doesn't use it. That's how much we believe in it. And it goes back to the eyeballs, right? It goes back to where people are viewing the stuff that they want to watch. And it's such a captive audience at that point. My family, we were pretty early adopters to cutting the cord. And so I understand that, how that environment looks, right? You've put the kids to bed, you're sitting down, you are not distracted for the most part, when you're watching CTV. And so, and then plus it's measurable, right? We can come back and see based on the Wi-Fi stuff and the attribution of when the people there's no clickable attribution on that. It's literally, they saw your commercial within, a certain amount of time, came to your website. That's valuable stuff. So, but it just goes back to where people are consuming content. And so we just believe that if you're truly going to have a complete campaign, if CTV is not a part of it, you're missing a very large chunk of opportunity there.
And it's a world where small businesses can actually play, whereas with linear, it was a lot more expensive and harder for them to compete with the big guys, right?
Yeah, and CTV has even opened up that realm as well, right? So to your point, yeah, the CPMs are much lower when you compare them to that traditional broadcasting. But think about this, and this is the strategy that we like to take to it. It used to be you had your broadcast TV. That's the only place you could really get your reach and your frequency. Well, now with all of the different programmatic things that are out there and all the different ways that we can utilize social media as well, the reach can be attained kind of in a combination of those things. And the frequency is, you can start getting it in different pieces. So now, instead of having to go after a big $20,000 a month broadcast buy, I can accomplish the same thing by going after some really targeted programming because I know that I'm getting frequency in other areas. So I really think it's opened up for the small advertiser. Programmatic, CTV, all of those have really opened up all of the channels for them to be able to jump in when they probably weren't able to do that 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's the dream, right? Everybody on CTV.
Yeah, and look, it's happening, right? I mean, it really is. I always like to walk around the office, and when we go into a client, go walk around and ask people. Um, it, First off, they don't usually know what CTV is, but ask them if they stream, right? And they come back like everybody does it, and that's why you need to be there because guess what? All of your prospects are doing it too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate all this wisdom. Before I let you go, though, I do like to ask every guest if they have a favorite podcast or a book they feel has been instrumental in their personal success.
Yeah, and I know you said one, but I've got two, right? So I mentioned one earlier, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I try to read that once a year. It is so instrumental. I give it to as graduation gifts to people that are graduating high school. I think it's that important. But this morning on the drive in, I finished "Buy Back Your Time" by Dave Martell, and that is changing my life. I've got my whole team reading that. It's really about making sure that your time is what's most valuable, and really kind of being able to prioritize stuff. So those are the two that are really instrumental in how I'm kind of trying to structure what it is we want to accomplish.
Awesome. Thanks for those golden nuggets. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, look, pretty simple. You can go to 3131media.com. That's 3131media.com. That's where all of our social media links will be. That's where our case studies are. You can learn about what it is that we do, soups to nuts, with how we help our advertisers and our clients out. So, yeah, 3131media.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Scott.
Hey, I really appreciate it. I can't say that enough. It's good seeing you again. And really thanks for the partnership too with Simplify. You guys really help us create success for our clients. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you guys for watching. Simplify TV is sponsored by Simplify, helping you to maximize relevance and multiply results with our industry-leading media buying and workflow solutions. For more information, visit simply.fi and follow us on LinkedIn to be informed of future episodes. Thanks for joining us today. I'm David McBee. Be awesome, and we'll see you next time.